Good afternoon. As I'm sure lots of you know, I finished my first GT recently. I played Big Wa. I went 3-2. Great time. A great community. Love Northern Wastes GT. Y'all should fly from all over the world to come to Northern Wastes GT next year. But I wanted to take a minute and go through some units, battle tactics, and so on, other things, and how I feel like they played, right? It's one thing to brainstorm and to theory craft and everything. It's another thing to put stuff on the table for 5 games and play it out and see how it goes. So I wanted to tell you what Gobsprakk was like for these 5 games. So my first game was against Nurgle, and Gobsprakk did fantastic. I knew what spells my opponent was going to cast that were going to be trouble for me, and I unbound them. I threw all my primal dice at Gobsprakk. The 3d6 unbind was good. My spells were good. Nurgle's a pretty slow army, and I was able to get Choking Mist and catch like basically the whole army on turn 1. So that slowed him down even more. So that was all good and fine. The damage that Gobsprakk did to the casters was relatively insignificant because Nurgle gets to heal stuff. So the damage that Gobsprakk did was not relevant. The only thing that really sort of mattered from Gobsprakk was the fact that he got that once per game 3d6 unbind. So, you know, and I won this game, and so Gobsprakk was able just to sit back the entire game, but overall, like, you know, like fine. Gobsprakk was fine in this list, or against this army. Against Khorne, Gobsprakk was relatively useless, not gonna lie. Khorne doesn't have any wizards, so it was all priests. So there was no interaction there. There was nothing to unbind. The spells were fine, but without any like buffs to casting, right? It was kind of inconsistent. So like Gobsprakk was not very useful here. A Kiloboss on Vulture would have been better than Gobsprakk against the Khorne list. But that makes sense, right? Because Khorne is anti-wizard, so weird that my wizard wasn't super impactful against Khorne. But, you know, like, your units are not going to be good all the time, right? So that was fine. Against Lumineth, Gobsprakk was, like, the Maw Crusher was my MVP. He basically won the game single-handedly. But Gobsprakk was fantastic. Gobsprakk moved forward, was within 30 of every caster they had, and all their casters were Littlefoot heroes. So by turn 2, my opponent stopped casting spells. Was just like saying like, oh, like I'm like not gonna, like, I'm not casting any spells because Gobsprack's gonna not only unbind them, but he's also going to kill them, right? He's gonna kill them. So Gobsprakk was fantastic this game. Fantastic this game. Against Sylvaneth, Sylvaneth has lots of casters. Gobsprakk moved up. And another thing that Gobsprakk was really good at was just getting me battle tactics, right? Like, you deploy within 3 of a piece of terrain, and if you need to move them, it's pretty easy to end that large base within 3 of any piece of terrain. So against Sylvaneth, Gobsprakk got within 30 of all the casters, and then I was unbinding the right spells, and, you know, like that once per game 3d6 unbinds, pretty good. I think at one point my opponent used a primal die to get a spell off, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm gonna use Screeching Mandrake like once per game, and that was enough to unbind it. So I was able to maintain that primal dice advantage for the rest of that game, which was great, right? It was absolutely great. And again, I won this game pretty handedly, so Gobsprakk didn't have to get into the fight at all, right? He was able just to sit back and do nothing. Against Seraphon, Gobsprakk, not gonna lie, was relatively useless. The Seraphon list had 12 casts, and he chipped Gobsprakk to death. I was trying to with my 2 unbinds, I was trying to focus on spells that the Slaawn was casting, because I felt that like dealing damage to Croak wasn't gonna do all that much, you know, because even if you like unbind once, let's say you unbind a spell and you roll a 6, you know, 6 damage is not really enough to, like, the odds aren't in your favor that you're gonna get that the Slaan's gonna die with that. So I and then Gobsprakk wasn't casting any spells because I was losing. Everything was going to get unbound, and I was and then my opponent was getting summoning points for unbinding spells, so I just sort of stopped casting spells. So Gobsprakk did move forward and smash to rubble the Ziggurat, right? So that was nice, but like, you know, Gobsprakk was really, really good unless my opponent was either playing really hard counter magic like Khorne, or they had an S tier casting army like Croak Seraphon. In every other instance, my Gobsprakk did very, very well. So I feel like all the hype around Gobsprakk is justified. I feel like he is as strong as people think. Telling for an opponent in the middle of a game to tell you that they're just not gonna cast spells anymore it's like, oh, okay, like I don't like that's better, right? Like you're not even gonna have magic, and just because I'm within 30 of you. Like if I told you that instead of Gobsprack's Unbind and all that Screaming Mandrake and the Mouth of Mork, if I told you instead of all of that things it says enemy wizards can't cast spells if they're within 30 of this unit, you'd be like, that's broken, right? Like that's absolutely broken. But that's what was happening. A couple of players, that's what happened. They just stopped casting. So 2 thumbs up. Definitely recommend. I think Gobsprakk is an auto include in Big Wa and Cruel Boys, obviously, but like, subscribe, Wa.